Hello everyone. So today I'm going to show you a little more in depth about what Park Engine can do. I've gone over this a little bit before, but mostly in a forum post, so I'm going to go over this in a video. Let's walk through some basics here. Okay, so over here we have the player editor. Right now I have all my casts set up to click on. A lot of these characters aren't 100% done, so let's go over one that actually is pretty much ready to go. So we'll go with Roy. He's the kid in the red. So immediately we can see a move list, but let's look at everything else one by one first. Cool. Alright, so click on main data. Here's where you put basic stuff, how fast they run, how fast they sprint in relation to how they run, their walk speed percentage. Most of the stuff doesn't change unless you really have something that you need to do. I usually don't mess with this stuff. It's usually set to these numbers and they don't change. But stuff up here does, like where their animation is, their animated mesh, the hip origin. Right now I'm using a Mixamo rig for some of these characters, but I'm starting to move over to something a little more advanced. But anyways, so this is where you store all the base animations. All of these are absolutely required. Otherwise, some of the more basic stuff doesn't work. Textures. Okay, so here's where you store all of your characters' textures. Depending on if you're going to have alternate colors, I have, 10 for every single character, depending on what team they're on. And then a base color. I have to assign every single mesh associated with them so that it knows what to swap out. And here are the basic meshes, sorry. Right, so what I used to do is I used to have one material and it would just swap the color, but I didn't end up liking how that worked. So I'm just swapping textures out now. Okay, for effects, these are like basic generic effects that everybody uses. Nothing too exciting here. Power-ups, this is basically what lets the characters do certain things. I can turn off dodge and he won't be able to dodge. I can activate jump and then he can jump. Technically jumping is allowed in the engine, but none of my characters are really set up to do it, so it doesn't actually work and I can't demo it for you. But you can do air jumping and quick step. I wonder if this still works. No, I turned that off completely. That used to, you flick the stick and he would take a quick step forward, but that's out completely. Weapon data, this is just where the weapon stuff is stored. This is collision information. Most of this stuff does not change. You usually just leave it alone. Passive skills, exactly what it sounds like. Pick either one of these and it however much you want. So if I allow MP generation, I set up a delay. How long does it wait until you're not being hit to actually do something, and then how much are you doing? Hidden blessing is just HP generation. Moves, that's where the move lists are. I'm going to show you all those in a little bit. Weapons, you can add as many weapons as you want. He's got 6 right now. We'll go over that later as well. And debug, that's just so I can visibly see something important, but right now it's not necessary. Alright, so let's go to moves. Let's talk about that. So under options, we've got a few things. Use moves, don't uncheck that, just leave that alone. Active move ID, that's mostly for debugging. This is also for debugging. And these don't change either. Okay, so base moves. This is what determines what move you initially get when you press a button. So if I press attack 1, this one comes out. If I press attack 2, this one comes out, and so on and so forth. Pretty simple stuff. There are also 2 other options for stances, so in case you want a completely separate move set, if you're swapping stances. This isn't something I use yet, but it is built into it. Theoretically, you can press a button to change the stance ID, and it'll completely give you a new move set. Input, this isn't actually used right now. It's similar to how base works, but it's just a little different. But I don't really use it right now. Alright, move list. This is where the bulk of everything goes in terms of gameplay for each character. So let's go ahead and let's edit a move. Let's edit this one. This is /1, which is this guy right here, so I can just click on it. So you can see a bunch of different colors, which denote different things. If it's blue, it means it's a guard. If it's green, it means it's some kind of parry. If it's red, it's an attack that actually physically hits the other person or anybody else. Grays don't do an attack, but they might be some kind of movement or something else, but they don't actually have a collision. Purples shoot projectiles. Projectiles are really cool and they're really easy to do in here, and I'll go over that as well. Alright, so here's the hit definition or move definition for /1. You got the character name and then the move you're working on. So let's start with state definition. I'm not going to go over everything here, but let's go over some basics. So you can define what kind of state it is. Pretty self-explanatory what all these do. It just basically tells the engine how things will respond when somebody tries to interrupt or what kind of move you're actually doing. Auto lock is interesting. You shouldn't use it at the beginning of a combo, but you would use it like on a like /2 has it because you can combo into this move from /1. So I'll show you what that does. There is no lock button in this game. Something I might add as a feature later for more general use, but here's how auto lock works. So if I slash her once, my character stays facing that direction, but if I don't press a direction, he'll automatically face exactly where he's supposed to be facing if auto lock is active. That's how auto lock works. Let me make sure it's on this move. Yeah, cool. There's also direction cancel, which overrides auto lock. So if I'm in the middle of a combo, I can face the other direction if I want, or whatever direction I want really. So if I'm getting surrounded, I can do that. And this one overrides auto lock. If I don't touch the stick, auto lock kicks in. If I touch the stick in a direction, you can cancel it. Pretty simple. Rest of this stuff is not used too often. It's pretty self-explanatory. Cooldown. So you don't use this unless it's a special move. I'll show a special move in a little bit so you can see how that works. Face. So a little hard to see from this angle, but basically it tells what face to activate on what frame. So it starts on time 3, and this is the face. So if you look very carefully at his face, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. And you can kind of see it. So I can let's pick a bigger face so it's a little easier. Let's pick Terror. Yeah, so you can very visibly see that. This is all set up through very complicated, not complicated, but a very extensive set of blend shapes. This isn't something that everybody is going to be using, but it does work. And if you set up blend shapes very specifically, exactly to how I set them up, then you can take advantage of that system as well. Alright, effects and projectiles. So this is how you pretty much make effects or projectiles. Really simple. So this slash that's happening on the character is technically an effect. It's not tied to the model. It's just it's a particle that comes out at that particular point. So I can adjust a lot of cool things about it, like I can adjust what frame it happens on, so that it happens at frame 13 instead of frame 1. Doesn't look quite right, but you can do it. So there you go. I call this a slash effect because they work a little differently than normal projectiles do, so I'm going to leave that checked because I don't want that changing. I can change the effect color. This basically ties to your weapon. You can select an effect color on your weapon and it'll change your slash effect if you want. I usually leave that alone too. Most of the time I don't need that. And then I can also adjust an offset if I need to, so it's way up there. I usually just make sure all my effects are in the right spot. I don't use the offset a lot, but it's something that's there in case it's ever necessary. Force origin spawn, basically no matter what, it'll force the effect to spawn at the character's complete local or world position. Again, it's not something I use too often, but it's doable. Alright, so how to add new effects. Really simple, actually. You just hit the plus button, and now you've got empty new effects. These won't do anything until you start assigning stuff. So let's assign something. How about a completely different slash effect? So this doesn't know it's a slash effect until I tell it is, and then I'll just set that to frame 13. So now we see a completely different slash effect. Great. I'm going to just delete that entirely. So let's do a normal effect. I'll just throw this earthquake on it because it's right here. So now on frame 7, an earthquake spawns. Cool. Doesn't actually do anything because the collision is not set up to actually respond to that, but it works. And let's say I don't want to keep having to drag and drop stuff and remembering numbers and all that. All I have to do is hit this, which copies, then I press this to paste it in the spot. So now I can just adjust these, and now it'll make a whole bunch of earthquakes. So the system is pretty much set up so that you can have up to 99 effects, a combination of 99 effects and projectiles per move. Not saying you should do that, but it's possible. So to get rid of them, you can just hit the X. You can also minimize them like this in case you don't want to see a whole bunch of stuff. And you can move them up and down, arrange them. It's hard to tell. I did it. There you go. So you can arrange them with the arrows. Pretty easy. Okay, so here's a couple other buttons here that do a few things. So we have set, which will automatically set to the first possible frame of the attack. Sometimes this doesn't look right. So here it looks okay, but when you actually hit her, you can see it isn't quite the right spot. I like to adjust my slash effects to come out a little earlier. I like this one at 1. Yeah. And you can set it to lock so that no matter what frame you have the attack on, it'll always be at that first one. In case you were constantly trying to adjust stuff, it just makes it so you have to keep come back up. Okay, cool. So that's how effects and projectiles work. Sounds work pretty much the same way. So to get a sound, you just drop it in here. You can adjust the pitch. You can adjust the volume. So pretty simple system to work with. And of course you can adjust the time, and this has the same kind of button that goes directly to the attack. I like to have this one come a little earlier, it just feels better. Cool. And to add, it's the same thing. Under advanced, you've got some extra audio options. I'm not going to go over all these. If you know how the audio source works, then you should know how these work as well. Great. All right. Moving on to Flux. Okay, so Flux is, you can see it here if I do a special attack. It's that little flashy effect you get on the character. You can add it to whatever you want. So I'm going to show it here so you can see it being active. So you can see now he's flashing, and you can change the colors to whatever you want. It'll just fluctuate between 2 separate colors. If you want just to pick one color, you set one to the color you want, and the other one to black. And there you go, it does work. Theoretically, you can have more colors than just 2, but I just limited it to 2. It didn't seem like I would ever need much more than that, but it's expandable to however many. So cool. Miscellaneous effects. Some basic stuff in here that almost never gets used. I'm just going to skip it. Hit effects override. Okay, so each weapon you can have set up to have a special hit element to it if you want. So this one has a slash element. So as you can see, when I hit her, it does like a slash sort of effect. I can manually override each move to do different effects. So I'm going to set this slash to be metal instead. And there's a system in place where you can set up, hit effects that go with sounds and all that. Let's see what ice does. So there you go, there's an ice effect. And let's keep it on ice for now, just so you can see all the other hits remain unchanged. So if you have a character who has a specific hit or type for their weapon, but you want to have them special elemental effect, this is a really easy way to do it. Here's electric. So great. I'm going to turn that off. Cool. Self effects. This is pretty simple stuff. So if I want, for example, if I want a puff of smoke to come out between these frames, there it is. That's a lot of smoke, so I'm just going to do it for 1 frame instead. Yeah, there we go. So that's really simple. I'll show the flame, so you can have a couple of flames come up. This is something you probably have last for a little bit longer, but there you go. I really only use these in very specific scenarios, but functionality is there and it does work. Flash. This one will actually flash the screen. So let's go ahead. There it is, it flashes the screen. That's a little irritating, but there you go. You can adjust the duration so that lasts a little bit longer. And you can actually even adjust the blend mode. So if I want it to be, these are like Photoshop blend modes. So this kind of just sort of brightens the screen up a little bit. You can do a subtract. It would probably work better if I picked a, there we go. Yeah, so it actually is subtracting that color. Yeah, so pretty useful if you need to do something like that. I've never actually used this in for any of my characters, but again, it's doable. So I'm just gonna turn all that off. Camera shake. I'm not entirely sure if this still works or not, but let's find out. Yeah, it works. Great. I'll set it to something bigger so you can see it happen. Yeah. So there it goes. Basically, you just pick the frame you want and then a few other numbers, and you got a camera shake. I moved to a different camera system, and I wasn't sure if I updated this or not, and it looks like I did. So great. Okay. Status. So here's how you can inflict a status effect. I'm going to go ahead and turn on poison, set it to 1, and now she's poisoned. You can tell because she's got like this poison effect dripping off of her, and if you look at her life bar, it's a poison graphic overlaid it. I've got a few other effects, so let's set it to, let's do defense down. It's exactly what it sounds like. Her defense is now lowered. A little hard to tell because I'm not, you have infinite HP right now, so how about we do this? Alright, so cured the status. So look how much damage this 4-hit combo does. So it does 60 damage. If I, actually hold on, that wasn't a full combo. Let's try that again. So 80 damage for 4 hits, right? So let's set it to defense down first. And then let's go ahead and do the full thing. Oops. Oh, I did too much there, 1 second. So it does 108 damage, so it's a little bit more. And you can, expanding and adding more status effects is really simple. You can also have it to set a status effect to yourself at a specific time. So if I want to, for example, poison myself at frame 9, there you go, now I'm poisoned. This is more useful if you have a character who does like a self-heal or something. But there you go. So I'll just let that burn out and reset it. Velset, I don't actually use this anymore, so we can just ignore that. Alright, properties. This is a little tricky to see unless I turn some extra stuff on, so let me turn on debug mode. Okay. And then I want to show my collisions. Okay, so this is your character collision. As you can see, when it's blue, I can be hit. When it's that cyan color, I'm invincible. And then you can see the red, that's the actual hitbox. So I'm going to, I can manually insert invincibility into any move. So I just check use invincibility, and then let's have him be invincible from frame 2 to 18. Oh, whoops. So I also have to check boxes here. So if I check this, he's invincible to hits. If I check this, he's invincible to projectiles. This is throw invincible, and this one is you cannot be inflicted by any status effect. So you would check all of these if you're doing like a fully invincible thing, but sometimes you only want to have something be projectile invincible. I've got a couple moves in the game that have super armor that are only status invincible, but basically no matter what, as long as there's some level of invincibility, you get that cyan color. So you can still see that. If I turn it off, then it just ignores it completely. Use adaptability is, there is technically an adaptability stat. It's similar to how it works in Dark Souls 2, but I don't use it anymore because it's kind of dumb. So there you go. Invisibility, it's exactly what that sounds like. So he disappears. I haven't set up all these meshes properly, so you can still see his head floating there. But it does work. Intangibility is it turns off your character's collision. It's really hard to demonstrate, but it basically lets you pass through stuff you shouldn't be able to pass through. I never use that, but it's an option. So armor and shield. So these do basically the same thing, but they work just a little differently. So let me go ahead and turn my collisions off. So armor, I'll set up armor for the whole move, and I'll give myself 1 hit. So I'll have hurt punch when I try. So what this is, it's super armor essentially. So I absorb 1 hit, and I keep moving. So if I get hit a second time before that move comes out, then I get interrupted. So shield works exactly the same way, except you don't take damage during it. Don't use that one very often, but it's there. They look a little different when you get hit too. I'll just show that to you. So armor has that yellow field surrounding. Shield, if I'm not mistaken, should be like silver or gray. There it is. Yeah, it's a little more gray. But they do the same thing. It's also a slightly longer hit pause during shield. But there you go. Unblockable means it can't be blocked. So that's a blockable light attack. Make it unblockable. And now she can't block it. I really only use that for throws. But there you go. Auto counter. It's supposed to turn this into a counter hit on the first strike, but that's a little buggy and it isn't quite working. So ignore that. Vampire, you can adjust the percentage of damage that you do to heal yourself. So, this would be roughly 45%, and this is 200%. So there you go. Collision. This is how you set how your attack actually functions. So you can see my hitbox on this attack right there. It's that red sphere. So I can actually adjust where it goes. Let's set it to 17, and now you can see it's way over there. So this is pretty much how you decide the range of something. You can also just adjust the scale flat out. Sometimes you don't want the attack to go far, but you want the scale to be larger. It just depends on the kind of attack you're doing. But there you go. And so I can, as you can see, I can hit her directly within that red sphere. I can adjust it to an obscene amount. Probably shouldn't make an attack like that, but you have the option. One's a bit small. I forgot what I had it at before. I think it was like 1.7. Yeah, a little bigger than that. That's fine for now. Okay. And by the way, all of these changes stay after you leave play mode, so you can make all these adjustments and it works just fine. Okay, so now we're on to frame data. So you've got this nice little bar here that shows a timeline of your attack. So this particular attack has 4 frames startup, hits on the 5th frame and it's active for 3. It's got 16 frames of recovery. This blue one says when you're allowed to cancel into the next move if you hit, and this green one shows you when you're allowed to cancel if you miss. So, and you can also adjust how many frames the other person is stunned for. This will allow you to set up, this is where the frame data starts coming in if you know anything about fighting games. So on hit, this one is +3, it's +14 on counter, +2 on guard, and if you get parried, you're -3. You can adjust how much parries take away from frame advantage in like the Game Master, but that's not really relevant right now. So if I want to change when this attack hits, let's just go ahead and slide this bar over. So this should hit on the 8th frame instead. You'll see a little bit of a delay. So yeah, works just fine. And I can make it hit instant on frame 1. So there you go. Let's put it back to where it was. Perfect. And let's just go ahead and show what it looks like if I have just a ridiculous amount of time. It goes up to 100 frames. So there she is, stuck in a 100 frame attack. Obviously you want to be careful about stuff like this, because then you just get easy infinite combos. So not a great idea. You want to pay attention to frame data if you can. So cool. So frame data kind of ties into the cancel section. And this is how you get moves to cancel into each other. So really simple. You can check any one of these boxes to do like a general cancel. So this one, let's for example, I've got it generally canceling to dodge. So that's my dodge. I'm going to turn collisions off. So that's my dodge. And if I press the attack, then I can cancel it into a dodge after frame 16, as you can see up here. But for now I have it set to /2, so if I press attack 1, it'll go to /2. If I press attack 2, it'll go to the other slash, which is BO2. And set it to special 1, then I press special 1 and it cancels directly to that. So it's pretty easy to set up a cancel. I have generic buttons which will automatically, if you just click this, I'll just clear this out so you can see how this works. So if I wanted to special cancel, I just click that, and if I wanted to super cancel, then you click that. And the reason, how you know which ones these are, if you look over at the base and you sign these up properly, then it'll just jump to these automatically and you're good to go. So there's a few other things here. So let me click this to update, and this will give you a list of all the characters' moves. So let's say I want, at the end of this move, I want to automatically do your special one, right? So I'm going to pick special one from the drop down, and then I click this yellow box. And now at the end of this move, he should do his special one no matter what. Yep, I didn't press anything for that, it just does it. So I don't want it to do that though, I don't like that at all, so I'm just going to kill that with the X. And that's pretty much it for that. I'll come back to this in a second. Actually, no, I'll just show you this right now. So if I want to, for example, jump to edit, let's say /2, I just click on this gray dot, and now here we are in /2, so we can start editing that one. That's pretty much it for that. Alright, so those are cancels. And charge, so this one, it's not on this attack, but it's on this one, so you can hold the button down and charge it up for a certain amount of time. You can edit how all these works. Reset charge is basically always on, you never turn that off. This will add more damage to the charge, this will add more velocity, so it will let you move farther forward during, so this one, like you see, he steps forward a little bit more. If I add velocity, then he'll fly further. And this one shows you how much it charges up, what the maximum is, and how much power the charge is worth. So if I do this attack, does 81 damage. If I charge it up fully, no, I didn't show it that time, hold on, it does 160. So yeah, you can edit that to adjust it. And these are the buttons you release to activate the charge. So why don't I go to the charge move. Cool, so here it is. So this one has a charge power of 10, and if I release attack 2, just like it says, then it'll cancel automatically into the ending move, because how the charge works, it just sits there and loops the state over and over again until you release the button. And if you just tap it, it just kind of just flies right through it. So to get it to do what we want, we have to go to the actual charging hit, which is this move, and we just have a look at charge and make sure it's set to add damage. And the only time you don't want reset charge on is on the attack that is affected by the charge, so we turn it off here. But everything else is set up the same. So if I set the charge power to, let's say, 50 instead, so it does 85 damage. If I fully charge it, then it should do a lot more. Let's actually get the number to pop up. Okay, it's not popping up. One more try. Well, you can see, look at her life bar. You can see how much it's taking. That's a lot. 480 damage. Great. So yeah, we don't really want that, but that's how it works. Alright, let's go back to slash. And now we have costs. So stamina cost. So this is how much stamina it takes when you do an attack. So the yellow bar is the stamina. If I want it to use a ton of stamina, let's do 30. And you can see it's using up a lot. If I don't want it to use any, I just set it to 0, and it doesn't use any at all. Really simple. Super cost, this blue bar right horizontal one is your super. This doesn't use super, so there's no reason for it to affect it. Do not build super. So when you do any damage, you build super, but if for some reason you have a move that you don't want it to do that for, you can just check that box. Rest of these are pretty simple. Actually, these two don't get used anymore because I don't use MP anymore. I use cooldowns, which I'll show you in a minute as well. Require ammo if it's a gun and you have projectiles, and this is really useful, and you can adjust how many shots it'll take per move. Alright, so heal, really simple. Do you want it to heal or not? So if I'll show you this on a different character, I think, probably in a different video actually. This one's getting a little long. But heal, that's how much it heals. This one actually allows you to heal cooldown times as well, but again, I'll show you that in a different video. Damage, this is how much damage you do. There's a couple other flags here you can put in. So hit effects type, set it to a B effect so it'll count it as a strong attack. You can set it to a throw so that the game thinks it's a throw. That's what a throw looks like when you land it. Hit level, so this one's hitting low, so it gives you kind of a low animation on hit. The low and mid pretty much look the same. Actually, mid doesn't work, so we ignore it. So we use, oh, this is the wrong one. Yeah, we leave this on L. Hit type doesn't change. Hit level is what you want to change. Okay, so hit level, low, and mid do pretty much the same thing. So it hits in the stomach, and it gives you that animation. You can set up a separate one for like a foot if you want, but I just haven't done it for her yet. We have a hive one which hits her head back. Just depends on the visual style you're going for. And the second one over here is what it looks like. Or you can pick the animation on counter hit, so it'll be a little bit different. So let's show you that right now. Okay, so hit her in the stomach, and she gets, or hit her, or a normal attack, she gets hit in the stomach. And if I hit her in the back, which counts as a counter attack, then it knocks her head back. Cool. Hit damage works the same way. You can set how much damage you want to do. So this does 20 on hit. Let's just set it to 200 so you can see the difference. So now it does 200 damage. And the second number is counter hit, so you can have separate counter damage if you want. Guard damage if they're blocking. Stamina damage. This is how much you drain their stamina if they block. And fall damage, if you manage to make them fall down during the hit, then this is how much damage they'll take when they hit the ground. Okay, hit stop. If you know how hit stop works in fighting games, it works the same way here. I usually have my light attack set up for 8 frames. Let's set it for 50 so you can see the difference. So you can see we're both stopping during the hit. And so I'll set it back to 8 so you can see the difference. That's what 8 looks like. Usually I set it higher if it's a stronger attack. Over here is what it looks like if it's a counter attack. So it stops for longer if it's a counter. Hit stop power, this determines on how much they're shaking when they get hit. So if I set it to 5, you can see the enemy shakes a lot more. If I set it to a ridiculous number, this might cause a problem, but whatever, there you go. No, it still is fine. But there you go, you can go pretty high and it doesn't seem to care. Alright, hit physics. Pretty self-explanatory, a lot of this. So right now fall is not checked. If I set this to fall, you check both of these because the right side counters. So now it knocks her down. If I don't want it to fall on a normal hit, but I want it to fall on a counter, then there you go. Sometimes you want it to do the opposite, so now it falls on normal and it doesn't on counter. So it works both ways. Airfall, I always have this checked. So if you're juggling, you always are able to keep that up. Hard knockdown works the same way in a fighting game. It allows them to tech or not. By default, I have this turned off in the game, but you can turn that off in the Game Master and you're good to go. Vertical lock. This is kind of a unique property. So why don't I show that to you? So there's no walls to bounce off of. So if I hit her, yeah, it kind of freaks out. So let's see. What this is supposed to do is it's supposed to knock them in a straight line until they hit a wall. But it doesn't work especially well right now. Only certain moves work with it, so we're just going to ignore it. Okay. So we also have facing override. So right now, when you hit somebody, generally speaking, it doesn't change the direction they face. Sometimes you want it to, so I'm going to set it to invert. Actually, this one doesn't do much right now. Force facing, this is the one we want. So if I hit her, she's going to face towards me immediately. And now if I invert it, it still doesn't. Alright, I think I turned that off. So never mind, ignore that. Direct facing works similarly to force facing, but instead of facing towards you, it faces towards the attack or the collision. So it's not immediately apparent how this works, but it does work. You use this more for projectiles, and direct facing collision works the same way, but this one is better for longer range attacks. So if I had an attack to hit out this far, I would use direct facing collision. Okay. Alright, so what else do we have? Got it. So now we have hit velocity. This shows how far do they go back when you hit them. So a little hard to tell, but she is actually moving backwards each time I hit her. Let's set this to a higher number so you can see it work. As usual, the right side is how it functions on counter hit. So if you want them to, for example, if I wanted this move to go really far back on normal hit, like a lot of push, but on counter I didn't want it to move very much at all to open up new combos, then there you go. Hit air velocity is how far do they go when they're knocked down. So this one is set to go not very far. So let me set it to go a little farther so you can see how that works. So there she goes. Vertical hit velocity, how high do they go up when you hit them? So I'll set this to 12. So you can see you can go pretty high. So you can also probably notice that as I'm juggling her, this is kind of a built-in. That's a little weird. Hold on. Yeah, there you go. So you can see she starts to fall faster and faster. That is an infinite protection system to keep, you know, people from doing infinite combos. This is something you can turn off if you like, but I leave it on by default. So eventually she falls and I can't do that anymore. There are a couple other systems in place as well, but that's the default one. So I like to keep that usually around 6. That's what usually feels okay to me. Guard velocity works just like hit velocity, but only with guarding, and there's no counter hit options because you can't counter hit somebody during a guard. Gravity never changes, I leave that alone. And now we've got bounces, so I'm going to set this to 1 on both sides. This allows 1 ground bounce for normal hit and counter, and let's set the ground bounce velocity to 4. So now she bounces off the ground. So even though its ground bounce velocity is set to 4, it does take into account how fast they were falling. So the velocity isn't always exactly 4, but it's going to be pretty close to it, but also a little bit based on how fast they were falling. So you only get 1 ground bounce per combo. It's something you can override. So right here in reset bounce counter, I can force it to reset each time, but now we've got an infinite combo. That's something you usually want to avoid. Yeah, like there's no way out of that. So you don't want to use that too often. Wall bounce allows you to bounce them off a wall, and the wall bounce animation has a separate look to it. So I'll show you what that looks like. So fall has to be set up, wall bounce is set up. I'm going to put the hit air velocity a little higher. Well, a lot higher. So the walls here aren't bounceable, so I can't exactly show that to you, but you can see when I hit her, she does that spin. So if you're able to be wall bounced during a fall, that spin shows you. It's just a nice visual cue that it can be done. But usually they'll bounce off the wall, but these walls don't let you do it, so we're going to ignore that for now. Alright, turn all those off. Set it back to normal. Great. Alright, final thing is player physics. So this is what determines how far forward you move when you do your attack. So right now it's set to 4. Or no, it doesn't actually do anything. Move speed is at 0. So if I want it to do a move at the absolute soonest it possibly can, we can set the start move speed. Let's set it to 10 so you can see how that works. So you can see he immediately takes a quick little step forward. If you want to set up a specific time for it, let's leave it at, actually let's set it to frame 17 so it's more obvious, and we'll set the move speed to also 10. So you'll do the attack and then take a step. Yeah, so there you go. Move friction, you can adjust this, it's okay to do it, it's just going to make it a little more slidey. So there you go. Sometimes that's what you want, sometimes it isn't. So if you want the character to move forward a lot, but you don't want to set the velocity too high, That's what you would normally use, but you're going to get an abrupt stop at the end. Usually keeping the friction high is the better choice, because well, even in this scenario it doesn't look amazing. I mean, it looks a little better, but I still wouldn't normally do that sort of thing. But anyways, you get the idea. And that pretty much does it for moves. So let's talk a little bit about how the weapons work. So let's go to the weapons tab over here. So right now I'm using the first weapon, which is Excalibur. So we'll hit edit, and here is the weapon setup. So this is where you can adjust the stance. We talked about this before in the move list. So you can actually have the stance assigned to, or the weapon choose what fighting stance you've got. So if I pick a different weapon and I set the stance, then I could technically have it access a completely different move set. It is doable. So here we can also change the hit element. Let's change this one to water, and it should. Oh, actually, it doesn't work at runtime. So you can't. That's the one thing you can't do at runtime. So we'll ignore that. But you could change the element of that weapon. I'll show you a different weapon so you can see how it works in just a second. Trail color. This is the color of the slash. Let's change it to green. I'm not sure if you can change this at runtime either. Oh, it looks like you can. So yeah, you can change it to whatever you want. So let me just put that back. Cool. These are descriptions of it. This is flavor text. This is actual text. And these are the weapon skills that go with it. So if you press the weapon skill button, that's not it. That's it. Yeah, then this weapon has that weapon skill. And these are the stats that go along with the weapons. And this is just like a balance meter, which it doesn't really do much, but it shows me how many points the weapon's got so that I can determine if there's something wrong somewhere. It's like a very rudimentary way to balance something, so I don't give too many points to something or take too many away. So if I put points into power, then that starts to climb. I usually like to keep them in the yellow. Sometimes I go higher depending on what the weapon skill does. Sometimes I go lower. It all depends. Okay, so since we're here, let's talk about... Actually, I forgot to show you how cooldowns work. So let's do a special attack. That's a special, so you can see this cooldown is recharging. When it turns blue, you can do it again. So let me just adjust that one really quick. That one should be... Yeah, so one earthquake. So this is all the stuff associated with that, but I just want to look at the cooldown. Alright, so I have it set to 4.5 seconds. Let's set it to something really high, 22. So you can see it's charging up real slow. I'm going to manually reset that. So now it's back, and I'm set it to something really tiny. And now I can do it again. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Not much else to it besides that. I can set it to change whichever one of these I want. So let's say I wanted it to, for some reason, also affect special 2. Then there you go. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but there you go. His second special is that. Yeah, it's a little weird. Okay, so more about weapons. So we've got... Let's jump to a different weapon. Let's do Heavy Excalibur. So let me switch that up. Go to this one. So there we go. This is the heavy one. So this one's speed stat is a little bit lower. This one's set to -1. If you look at this one, it's set to 1. So you can visibly see that he's moving a little bit slower now. But he does more damage. So if you remember earlier, that basic 4-hit combo did 80 damage. Oops. This one does 92. So it's because its power is set to... Oh, yeah. So the last one was set to 0. And this power is 15. So it does 15% more damage. Cool. But it's got its own different weapon skill. So instead of that dash I showed you, he's got this spinning attack, which also has some super armor. So we'll let her do that move, and I'll just kind of phase through it. Yeah, there we go. And it's got a knockdown with a wall spin to it, so it's kind of a useful move. No, it probably should face the right way. It's a nice little counter hit if you are paying attention. You get plenty of time to do it. And it even works if you're facing the wrong way, see? Okay. So let's go, and this one also has a different hit element. So this one's got smash set to it. So we get different looking and sounding attacks. Let's switch it up to a more obvious one. So here's the ice one, the Cool Cane. So it's set to ice. This one you move a little bit quicker, do a little bit more damage, but there you go. And so you get completely different effects, and that's the weapon skill that goes with it. That one's shooting a little bit high. So let's talk about projectiles since we're here. So first let's go to the move list and let's bring up Ice Shot. Let's have a look at projectiles. So projectiles are in the same place that effects are. They just look purple when you select projectile. But you get a couple more options. So you go to projectile stats, and here's where you can put a lot of stuff. So this one, it's going up straight at an angle. It's not supposed to do that. So let's adjust the gravity on it so that it'll fall a little bit. That's way too much. So let's pull the max down. Yeah, it's kind of good. So there we go, it actually hits her now. Great. Okay, so let's say we want to adjust a little bit more than that. I think I don't want it to fall as fast. Yeah, that's fine. Great, okay, so let's say we don't want it to fall as, or let's say we want to do something a little different. Let's have it move quicker, so we can just pull this move speed up. And there you go, it goes much faster. It's a bit much, isn't it? But that's okay. So you can actually also have it lock on. Technically it's allowed to lock, but it's not doing it fast enough, so it doesn't actually do anything. So here's it locking. It actually homes onto her now. So in case you wanted a homing attack, there you go, it works. The lifetime of it, this is just how long it's allowed to stay on the field before it automatically destroys itself. In this particular case, it falls underground pretty quickly, so it doesn't really matter. But let's drop the life down really low so you can see it just disappear quickly. Yeah, see, it just kind of goes away. So this is how you can adjust the range of the weapon. Jitter and rotation don't do anything at the moment. Actually, this one might. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, I don't think it does anything right now. It might just be turned off. Yeah, these don't do anything. Okay. So you'll also notice variation. So let's put it back to that kind of low one. Alright, so it disappears halfway there each time I do it, pretty much at that exact line. But if I turn variation on, let's just put it at maximum. Sometimes it'll go farther, sometimes it'll go a little shorter. Yeah, see, that time I went farther. Really just depends on what you want to do. Sometimes you want it to vary. Most of the time I don't like that, but the option is there. And the same thing goes with speed. Like, you can adjust the variation on that, so you can get that moving speed. That one's really slow. That one's about the same. That one's much quicker. So there you go. And there's a couple other options. You can adjust the time, same as you can with the normal effects. We also have something here called spread. This kind of randomly assigns an angle to it depending on how high you've got it, so it makes it less accurate if you want. This is useful if you're setting up kind of like a shotgun sort of thing, so let me make a few effects so you can see what I mean. So I'm going to copy and paste those stats. So you can see it kind of made a whole, or makes 4 projectiles, and they're kind of spread out a little bit. So yeah, if you're making a kind of a shotgun, that's useful. Yeah, great. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's the overview I'm going to go over now. And in the future, I'll be going over more stuff. Next video should be about AI as long as I get to a point where it's ready to be shown. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.